This episode of Rick and Rick is brought to you by Taskin, the first name in ultra-stylish, premium-quality travel gear, like the Taskin Air Duo dual-sided compression packing cubes. One side's 100% air breathable to keep clean clothes fresh and wrinkle-free. The other side's odor and water-resistant to keep dirty laundry sealed up tight. Now you can pack up to 40% more in the same space. Save 30% on your next purchase when you use the promo code R&R Take 30. That's R&R Take 30 at taskinsf.com.
Welcome to Rick and Rick Rule the World, the podcast where Rick Matheson and Rick Wooten share their unique brand of news and views from the intersection of marketing, media, tech, and pop culture, delivered with an extra-large serving of fun.
And welcome to Rick and Rick Rule the World. Rick Matheson here, sitting in for both Ricks today, but I come with a guest, B2B high-tech marketing leader, Michael Cichon. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, Rick. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It is great to have you. Michael is a Silicon Valley veteran with over 2 decades of experience in marketing B2B SaaS-based solutions for organizations ranging from startups to publicly traded companies. And I've personally had the privilege of working with Michael for, I think, a decade next year, primarily on content marketing in his role as Chief Marketing Officer at One Cosmos, as well as former roles at companies like Agari and ThreatMetrics. Michael, I'm sure we're going to touch on One Cosmos as we go along here, but first, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and how you got started on your path to marketing SaaS solutions for B2B brands?
I actually started my career as a solution architect, demonstrating how large enterprise resource planning systems worked. So I was on planes a lot, and I had the opportunity to work with 3 or 4 companies and was hired by a 5th company in a different role. They call me a strategic marketing analyst. And what I was doing was I was providing insights on how to present, how to message against competitors that I had experienced through my work as a solution architect. That was really only intended to be a short-term gig. And they kind of got dragged into marketing, kicking and screaming. And from there to director of marketing for a traditional on-prem solution provider. And I followed the movement of, on-premises systems to systems that were sold more on a subscription basis and hosted in the cloud. And then in 2016, made my latest iteration of my career, which is shifting to cybersecurity and focusing initially on content and then eventually getting to the CMO role.
Yeah, that is the other theme here. So you've been in SaaS solutions, but you've focused in the security space. What makes that such an exciting sector for you?
Well, it's a fascinating space. I mean, the criminal mind is one fascinating thing. And if we were able to wish into existence, getting these criminal minds focused on things that would benefit society as a whole, it would be probably way advanced from where we are today. But, once I immersed myself in, kind of the mentality of cyber criminals and how to combat these threats, curiosity just led me to dig deeper and deeper and eventually got me to where I am.
I saw a stat the other day. A UN chief was saying that global gross domestic product would be 2 points higher if it weren't for cyber crime.
Right. Unfortunately, criminality is part of the human nature of at least part of our population. So it is what it is.
Now, beyond the benefits of SaaS-based security for so many sectors, financial services, healthcare, retail, government, and on, we've also made it a point to emphasize how important digital security in general and digital identity in particular is to marketing organizations. I bet that's something that most CMOs don't actually think about, or at most will touch bases with the CTO or CISO about. But in the digital age, security and identity are far more central to the brand experience than most people may realize.
Definitely. I mean, the way we identify online is for the last 60 years been the email address and the password. That's how we're recognized. And over time, technology has been developed to recognize us by the device we use. So, if we're banking with a particular device over and over, the kind of marriage of that device with the user ID and password identifies you. The device actually sits in for the person on the internet. And over the last 5-10 years, we've all seen this fail on a grand scale. And that certainly emphasizes the need to improve security. But what you're hitting on is also the impact of the brand on this. So the experience an individual has with a company online contributes to their concept of this brand, this company, right? Are they ahead of the times? Or are they behind the times? Is it easy to work with this company? Is it difficult? And in my corner, the user experience and logging into a system goes to brand very strongly.
Yeah. And it's probably a good segue to touch on what One Cosmos does.
One Cosmos ushers identity into contemporary times. I mean, essentially, we get past this concept of a password and a user ID, and we create a digital identity. And, what does that mean? It means that you're essentially represented by a digital wallet that's highly secured in an exponential way compared to the way that a user ID and password are generally stored. And this wallet also is an identity that's higher in fidelity. For example, when you use a user ID and a password, there's really no fidelity to it. You have the password or you don't. And if you have the password, often you're not trusted. So you have to come up with another artifact like a SMS code or a code that's mailed to you or sent in a text message, or you're asked questions, your mom's maiden name or what have you. The fidelity of a digital identity is much higher. We're looking at things like fingerprints, iris scans, facial recognition, and not just capturing that image, but in a lot of cases, cross-verifying it. For example, we can verify that a face presented on a camera matches the face on a credential, driver's license, for example, and then prove that that credential is legitimate. That, if it's the state of California that issued the driver's license, are there records that verify that this particular document with this particular photo and the information on it is legitimate? So One Cosmos, we certainly provide, fidelity that on the very, very high end of the spectrum. So if you want to scan a driver's license, a passport, and verify identity, we do that. But more times than not, there's different types of employees around the enterprise, and they need different ways to log in. So, maybe for somebody that has access to, let's say, a commercial pipeline that supports the East Coast, maybe you want to do a very, very rigorous identity verification for that person versus verifying the identity of a part-time worker that you've hired to perform some type of a data exercise for you.
And using the app, when you go to log into something, it can include this thing where you kind of take a selfie, essentially, but it's a live video. The system knows that it's not just matching the picture of the person who should be allowed onto a system or to do banking or what have you, but that it's literally the person in real time in front of the camera. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's at the higher end of the spectrum, the live selfie. And there, now you've got to combat deepfakes. So the technology has to have ways to defeat a presentation attack, which is a deepfake originated attack, or what's called an injection attack, where you interrupt the feed between the camera and the device and you insert something. So we have to have those protections in place. But you mentioned the app. You can use the One Cosmos app. The One Cosmos app can be branded. If you don't have an app and you want one that looks like it belongs to your company, the technology can also be embedded in an existing mobile app, or we can go appless. We've developed technologies just to use the capabilities of a browser and a video device to, replicate what we do on a mobile app.
Awesome. Now, you are a firm advocate of content marketing, and you've shared with me some of the metrics that you've seen in driving traffic and engagement at different steps of the buyer's journey. Why don't you paint a picture for listeners about the importance of content marketing specifically for SaaS and B2B markets?
Well, I think, my perspectives are colored by the types of companies that I've worked for probably in the last decade or so, which tend to be more innovative solutions companies focused on creating a market niche, creating brand recognition, differentiating themselves in noisy markets. If you're selling water in the desert, it doesn't take too much marketing, right? You don't need a white paper. So the point is, if you have viral demand, and you just happen to be the lucky person with the product that services that viral demand, there's not much marketing involved. And we've seen examples of technologies like this that have flown off the chart without, much marketing. Now, how much marketing does ChatGPT require? Not a heck of a lot.
Right.
And it's gone viral faster than just about anything.
Right.
But when you're selling into a market that maybe doesn't understand the innovation that you brought to market, you've got to be good at explaining very clearly the benefits of it,
Right.
And even the drawbacks to some extent. But, just hyping a product with buzzwords or great promises and putting a bunch of ad dollars, that's not going to help, from my perspective, a new brand break their way into an existing market. So that definitely colored my perspectives of the role of content marketing, the importance of it.
Sure. So getting that inbound traffic with content that's of interest to the target audience.
Well, it is, right? And there's a fine line. You obviously have an objective. I mean, as a for-profit company, you eventually want to sell something and sell it at a profit. But, you can't do that by slamming vague messages down somebody's throat. In my experience, that's not a winning strategy.
When we come back after this short break, we'll continue our conversation with Silicon Valley CMO Michael Cichon, including the state of generative AI adoption in B2B marketing. So don't touch that dial.
This episode of Rick and Rick is brought to you by Taskin, the first name in ultra-stylish, premium quality travel gear, like the Taskin Air Duo dual-sided compression packing cubes. One side's 100% air breathable to keep clean clothes fresh and wrinkle-free. The other side's odor and water-resistant to keep dirty laundry sealed up tight. Now you can pack up to 40% more in the same space. Save 30% on your next purchase when you use the promo code R&R Take 30. That's R&R Take 30 at taskinsf.com.
And welcome back to Rick and Rick Rule the World. This is Rick Matheson in for both Ricks today, and I'm talking high-tech B2B marketing with Silicon Valley CMO Michael Cichon. Now, you mentioned generative AI or ChatGPT, and that's obviously been all the buzz for the last 24 months. And I'm curious if you're using generative AI, and if so, how?
We're using AI in different ways now. It's incorporated into some of the intent signals that we get from multiple platforms. I think moving forward, looking for more innovative uses of it, we've deployed a AI chat tool on our website. We've trained it with white papers and the content that's on the website, in which, from my perspective, brings the traditional website into question, right? If you have all your content and you can feed into an AI engine that's capable of understanding questions and interacting with an individual interactively, why do you need a website for people to go around fishing and looking? They could just ask the bot as if they're asking a very well-educated person. So I think long-term, the traditional website might be under fire. I think traditional content might be under fire when you can just, ask a very specific question and get the very best answer available from an AI tool using all the content you feed into it. So that's where I see things going in terms of content. When you look at chat GTP type tools on the marketing function, it even gets more interesting. We clearly have intent signals coming from the outside. We've got social media feeds. We've got, website interactions. We have the ability to put together emails. To me, it gives us the inputs and the potential to get very, very micro-targeted with our communications, understanding, how individuals are interacting, understanding what they're doing in public communities like LinkedIn, what they're doing on our website, what these other tools tell us they're doing on the internet at large, and then what's the message we want to send to them? What's the content we want to send to them? I think the marketing function, just like a lot of things with AI, is in rapid transformation as we speak.
Yeah. And I'm curious about that because that sounds really interesting. Is there a specific solution in your technology stack that does this AI automation of seeking out intent signals and making recommendations for follow-up?
Well, I don't think we've yet seen an integrated approach to what I've just described. I do see a couple people working on that in the market, and look forward to, if you will, the next generation of marketing automation, which I think you're probably already seeing some of this in your LinkedIn feed. The marketing automation systems a lot of us are used to using, things like Marketo, HubSpot, these were developed in the early 2000s. This is 2 decades ago now, believe it or not. And it's ripe for improvement on the heels of AI. What can AI do to improve one of the most valuable B2B channels, which is email marketing?
Well, it raises an interesting question, Michael. So do you see any of the incumbents in MarTech competing, or do you see challengers usurping them?
Well, when you talk about incumbents, if you're talking about brands, I'm not seeing very many incumbent brands come to the table. If you're talking about individuals, I don't think you have to look too far to see, some of the principles behind the early architects of Marketo, for example, coming to the table with brand new ideas that promise a tectonic shift in marketing automation.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, you mentioned the prospect of AI replacing what we think of as a website, and I'm intrigued by that. But an angle I wanted to ask you about is just in terms of SEO and SEM strategies, as search is increasingly run through these AI answer engines. How do you think that's going to play into the way that marketers in general, but B2B and high tech in particular, goes about getting that inbound traffic?
Well, on the SEM side, on the advertising side, I think the platforms that support advertising are probably the choke point, right? Are these platforms able to get to the accounts and maybe the individuals that matter in a way that helps us fine tune the message? I think that's evolving right now. I've seen account level support from a lot of the tools out there. We'll have to wait and see what AI offers in those platforms. But, the way that we advertise is governed by the capabilities of the platforms we use, right? So on LinkedIn, you can do some targeting, at an individual level, at an account level. How granular that gets depends on the platform, right? Same with Google AdWords or, Bing or, any other platform that you use there. On the SEO side, I don't know that AI to me represents a tectonic change. I mean, we're already producing text-based content, doing all we can to label our videos in a way that are findable, share them on platforms like YouTube that are findable. A big driving intent behind most of what Google's done over the past 20 years has been, let's get the black hat tactics out of the way and find content that's written for humans that humans find usable. And that's the guiding principle behind all the content that we develop.
And I'm curious about your view on the state of email, the original digital channel. How are you using it these days? Is it evolving in any ways these days?
The challenge there is always, using this channel to send out meaningful communications that people care about. So if you're blasting out batches of 60,000 emails, I'm not Aerosmith and I don't expect, 60,000 people be wowed by the same thing, right? So I think the challenge with email is it's a channel that allows, rich interaction. It's the bandwidth to support that. It's segmenting and micro-segmenting your audience. We're not sending out, even batches of 1,000. We're sending out batches of 100 or a dozen or 2 dozen based on specific interests, specific interactions, the recency, the timing of those interactions, and then, what we can infer as far as what we think would be the most interesting piece of information to send to these individuals. So it represents, I think, a strategic challenge. How do you come up with these segments? What are the digital breadcrumbs that get you to set up these segments? And then it becomes an operational challenge. How do you get messages to these folks? And that, again, is where I hope to see AI step in and help connect the dots and make this more feasible.
Fantastic, Michael. Well, I hope that we can have you back on the show in the future. Really enjoyed this conversation. Really great, pragmatic comments. So really appreciate your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
That's going to do it for us this week. Until next time, keep on kicking ass and keep on coming back to the one show where almost everybody's name is Rick and everybody rules the world.